controlled sound from Remo. So it's another Remo product. And you see it's got a ring in the middle, and there's sort of single ply around the outside. The heads tend to be single ply or double ply, so they'll either have one layer or two layers. I think the control sound is a one layer with the dot, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. So it's a single ply thing, and then you've got a dot in the middle. So effectively it's stopping ringing from the middle. So I tend to get much more definition and depth in the crack. But if I go to the edge, and I can feel the whole drum resonating. And again, you'll find with this that it does allow the drum to ring. So it does allow a certain amount of the ring in that drum. And in fact, Paul has one of these as well, which needs a tune, I think, to think about. Yeah.
Massive.
And it's only just had a new head put on it. And this has got a slightly different head on it. Similar kind of principle, but this one's a two-ply, isn't it?
No.
That's a single. You've got Ambassador.
Ambassador
X. So this is a single ply, Ambassador X. And the thing with the X is, again, it's got that spot under it. The spot is underneath. Now at the moment,
nice.
That needs tuning. So Paul, I'll give you a stick. Paul will give that a bit of a tune as we're going. It means we'll have little double hits of things. In fact, you can have one of those. You've got a key, haven't you? So that you can have a little tweak on that, and then we can start to hear the difference between this one. You'll notice they're almost identical drums, but this one is deeper. So that's just examples of a couple of metals. Another metal that you'll regularly see in drum design is brass. And brass drums, I think, have a kind of balance between the steel and the bronze. The bronze is colourful, very, very colourful. The brass tends to be a little less colourful, and has, you know how the steel has, there's a certain solidity to it, a certain drive. It has lots of that. But what really has that are drums that are chrome on brass. So you find these drums and they've got chrome, much like this Iron Cobra pin pedal, that with brass underneath, and God, they sound solid. And if you think about AC/DC, things like that, where it's all what's called backbeat, it's all 2 and 4, just solid 2 and 4, your chrome on steel drum is going to give you that. That's where all of that kind of super solidity comes. And again, chrome on brass even. And you know, things like Ludwig Black Beauties and things like that, again, they just have that super solidity, but they've got a depth and a length to them, which is why I go, okay, I can see why that's such an expensive drum and why it's on so many records. They really do have an amazing sound. I would say if you were working with a band and you had the budget and you knew that you wanted that 2 and 4 and you wanted the solidity, the depth, all the mic position stuff we've looked at this week in tutorials, we've seen how much variation there is there. Once we've picked our mic, we've picked our position, kept it from being boxy, which is a real problem with snare drums. Sometimes you will find just hiring a drum. It might only cost you 20 quid a day and you might need it for 4 days. You might go 80 quid, you're having a laugh, but you know what? It'll be worth it because it sounds great. So, anyway, that's your kind of metals. There are other metals as well. You get brass that's, for example, it's kind of hand hammered and might have lots of different marks and things in it. There's other things that metal comes out of. One thing I'm a big fan of is a wooden drum. So I'm a big fan of your wooden drum. We've got 3 wooden drums here. And what we'll do is we'll start with the birch drum. Now birch is a drum material, and again I'll show you a resource that talks about the woods and their colorations and such things at the end of the class. Birch is a material that is famous for being used in studio drums. Okay? Massively popular material. Tends to be very, very balanced in terms of bottom end and top end. Don't tend to get massive variation. I'm just going to log on to this particular website so you can see what it is. And there's a web resource which is rather helpfully called Drum Tuning Bible. It's Professor Sound's Drum Tuning Bible. And so, for example, here you can click on woods, and there's a whole set of information here about different woods. So it talks about Albacea falcata, whatever that is. Maple. Maple is a general, overall, warm-sounding product, can produce frequencies of the drum fairly well across the spectrum. True slow growth, old forest maple trees are most prized due to the narrow growth rings and sustained and straight grain. Wood resonates extremely well and finishes are well accepted. New and reforested yada yada. Solid snare made of burl or bird's eye maple, a very warm and overall tone, but also impart a very bright attack. Maple is generally thought to have an even tone across the spectrum. Mahogany, true mahogany from USA, 20% increase in low frequency resonance over a maple drum. This kick drum here has got 2 plies of mahogany to get that low frequency in there. So again, you see mahogany is often used there. Birch, very dense, tough wood. It gives you a 10% loss in reproduction of low end compared to maple, and 20% increase in high end. So you find by using a birch drum, it's almost got like a kind of a tilty cube on it, where it's pulled a little bit of bottom end out and added a little bit of top end snap. And I think that's one of the reasons why they communicate so well through a mic. because they really do deliver that snap. So let's have a listen to this.
Worth mentioning with that one that it's birch, but it's got a wrap of walnut.
Yeah,
on the
walnut
outside,
wrap
so it
around the
looks like a
outside.
walnut drum, but it's mainly birch.
It's actually birch on the inside. And this is what's got a very, very, very thin drum. It's only 6 plies. Again, ply would be a ring, so there's only 6 rings of birch in this particular drum. So can you hear the brightness, the crack? But there's also a woodiness to it. Can you hear on this one? You've got that splash of metal. This one, it's a very woody, rich, warm kind of splash that comes afterwards, but it's quite kind of cracky. And I always think in the room, I'm like, I'm not really sure about this drum. But you put a mic on it, God, it sounds amazing. Really mics up well. Head on this one. Underneath we've got an Ambassador Snare Clear, which is a slightly thicker resonant head. And on top there's an Evans Genera. And the Evans Genera, the difference with the Genera is, you know the other one we had the spot in the middle? This one effectively has got the spot around the edge. So this one is taming the outside of the drum and stopping some of that vibration getting through. And you'll find that top stops some of the high frequency overtones. You can already hear this drum is quite bright and snappy. If you listen to underneath it, compared with this side of it, it affects it. There's a lot of richness and warmth coming out the bottom of this drum. So there's a lot of good reason to have a mic underneath this drum. There's also, if I stand and play it, the higher I get, I'm getting more body and less snap. So again, you need to think when you're miking up a drum like this, where is the bits coming out of this drum that you want? But this is an example of a much thinner drum. Now, Paul here has another birch snare. I don't know if you can see from where you are underneath, but the birch snare here, you can see how that's a very thin shell. You can probably see how thick the shell is on that one. What's that, 20 ply? Yeah, so that's a 20 ply birch. So this is a much heavier, much thicker drum. Unfortunately it's got an Aquarian head on it, which, you know, but Paul's getting over it slowly.
I love this one.
Can you hear the change in tone? It needs hear more life, a little bit more bottom end, but that's got more snap and delivery from the thicker plies. And again, this website will talk about why. So again, an interesting resource, I think, for that. That's the birch. Maple, as we've already said, has slightly more low end in it, slightly less top end. And there's another way of getting warm and rich tone from a drum, and that is to think about using hoops other than your kind of metal hoop. Again, there are different types of hoops you can research into this. You've got die-cast hoops, you've got double flange hoops, triple flange hoops. They all do different things. And again, you get some people who have a rack full of shells, rack full of hoops, rack full of heads, and they will build the drum specifically for the recording. I don't expect you to go to that length. You know, it's just not practical. When we're here to learn, not to be ridiculous. But it's, you know, good to know what's going on. This is an example of a maple snare. So this is maple rather than birch. And again, 6 ply, incredibly light. It was handmade on the 23rd of September 2010. And this one's got a different head again. This one's got what's called a Remo fibre skin. And the fibre skin is basically mimicking calf skin, which is what these drum heads used to be made of. So this is a calf skin mimicked head. That needs tuning. It's just a little low at the moment, but that's going to come up a treat when it goes. So again, this drum is just incredibly light. If you're using a wooden hoop drum, again, you need to make sure you've got a stand that will go big enough. I only put the skin on here yesterday, so it's loose. They loosen off quite a bit. They take a while to settle, like a guitar string. I'm going to be a bit Keith Robinson and rapid with this one, just for the. Can you hear there's more low end barking, but it still sounds incredibly woody. I think a little moon gel. So again, moon gel to me is much like when we were talking about mic positioning, and there was one conversation that happened that said, well, what if you've got the mic positioning and you really like 90% of it, there's 10% of it you don't like, and by moving the mic to kind of fix the 10%, you lose the other 90%. Well, that's the point where it needs some kind of, you know, it's almost like here is good, but I need to equalise it, hence the word term equaliser. You know, the whole idea is it's designed for bringing back to where you want to be. And I always think of you know, drum tuning as getting it as good as I can get. And then this is my EQ. This is my little extra 10%, this little blue pack of moon gel. So I'm just going to gently rest that on there. Another bit. Yeah. There's lots, and in fact, this is the interesting thing with this drum. We were recording it the other day, and around the drum it sounds really snappy. When you got halfway through the studio, it was just like listening to a drum that sounded like it was 4 million times the size of that drum. It was like all rich and warm and thick, and it's kind of interesting there that to get the tone of this drum, you've kind of got to think about distance. But again, you wouldn't see this drum on a rock record. It just doesn't have that drive and that snap, does it? It's like, it's really kind of long and musical, whereas the steel that we had is much more, you know, so I'm like, oh yeah, that's more high energy, more rocking out and what have you than what we've had before. This is a slow thing. But the nice thing with the wooden hoop is you get the nice boom shot. Hard to do stood up. But the real nice thing is, again, the side stick is real. It's got so much wood in the sound, you know, it really does. So again, it's just a completely different instrument. Right, let's now flip back to our fossil bronze. This is our 14.5 by 6 inch, 6.5, something like that.
6.5.
6.5, yeah. So it's quite a deep drum. We'll talk about drum sizes in a second and show you some kind of snares that I think are worth knowing about. But let's have this one again. Crazy, crazy, crazy snare drum. I can't bring myself to hit it loud anymore, my ears are getting tired. But if we go for Paul's one now, so Paul's is the same drum in terms of the material, but it's an inch less deep, so it's a 5.5, 14 by 5.5, and in this case it's got the narrower snare wires on there. Now can you hear how the attack has got less depth to it? The attack section of this drum feels deeper than this one. But this one just brings all the colour in the world afterwards. It's like, so again, just that extra inch on the bottom has completely changed the nature of sound again from the drum. The extra inch on the depth of this one makes the attack feel deeper, but this one's got more splash and more colour. I almost feel like you could, if you record on the record, have these two up side by side and be constantly varying which one you were playing, and it would sound natural, but it would also give variation and sound cool. But there are lots of videos out, websites out there that sell drums that have put review videos up. So you'll find that most drums have 3 pitch ranges. They have a high range, where they really ping and sing. They have a medium range, which is what these are all tuned in, and then they will often tune down. And they tune down, you get fatness. And don't be afraid to embrace the big, wobbly, fat snare sound if your record suits it, if there's space for it.